Now I would request Gayatri. In fact, she has been leading this effort. Like, I should have thanked her in the beginning itself, rather, putting together the entire agenda and presenting it before you. So I would ask her to take care of the proceedings here onwards.
Thank you. And good morning to all of you. We have with us, at the very beginning, Ms. Almitra Patel, who is a known figure in the waste management domain across the country. She is currently a Swachh Bharat mission expert. There are a lot of achievements that would probably be humbling for me to speak much about. I'd like to welcome her. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. And we are here to listen to all that you have to share with us. Thank you.
First, my greetings to all my fellow MIT alumni. I was class of 58. Is someone taking? Yeah. Okay. Next. No, I'll tell you next. Yeah. We're going to be talking about solid waste management. The objective is to minimize the waste to dump sites, wrongly called landfills in India. And the main way, as you all know, is to keep different resources unmixed. So the wet waste can go for composting, vermi, or biogas, and the dry waste to recyclables. We now have a huge new category under dry waste, which is non-recyclables. It has a calorific value, but its most affordable and beneficial use is in plastic roads, which I'll talk about later. There is also a big category of inerts. Our construction and demolition waste today is about 30% by weight of the total rejects from a city. The cementitious waste can be crushed in normal stone crushers, modified stone crushers, to give you M-sand, manufactured sand. The road dust and sweepings and drain silt have been a problem for long. Next. But recently I came across a useful application where it has been used to make wall panels. And I have yet to go into the details of this with architect Chitra, but it's a very innovative use of road sweepings. Next. Yeah. We have three kinds of main problems for solid waste. One is, and the most important, I think, is the change in the mindset, the planning and the behavior of the complete hierarchy within cities. Everyone talks about IEC awareness and explaining to the citizens. But if the city is not equipped to take wet and dry, which the citizens are willing to keep separate, it's a failed exercise and just breeds cynicism and harder to get it restarted later. The change in the mindset and behavior of the citizens they serve will come after the cities have committed first to do what they are supposed to do, which is to keep the waste streams separate from beginning till end. And the third thing is design changes in some products which cause unsolved problems. I think that's what Tata Center would be most interested in. We'll come to that later. Next. The main problem in collecting waste is receiving it at the doorstep, and then if the distance is not too long, the same primary collection vehicle in small towns can go to the end processing point. In larger metros, you need to move it to secondary transport, which can carry it a lot further. This is a very innovative primary collection vehicle, a push cart, where it's just a normal push cart with a double handle and 6 bags hanging on it, so that at every doorstep, the waste collectors can sort it then and there. PET bottles, hard plastic, film, sanitary napkins, glass, and so on. There are other versions like cycle rickshaws, goods autos, and so on, tipper autos. These are harder to use for transporting wet and dry wastes unmixed, unless you have a different day for dry, which is really the best way to go. 1 day a week, at the most 2 days a week dry, and either every day wet, or what some cities are doing now, that on the dry day, they ask the citizens to hold back their wet waste for a day. And I'm surprised that they're getting good cooperation for that. Next. Yeah. The secondary transport is something that seriously needs design inputs and thought. Because the primary vehicle can only travel to nearby destinations. The transfer from the primary to the secondary vehicle is the tricky part. And the primary vehicles are down at road level. The secondary vehicles, tipper trucks are ideal as a secondary transport, but they're at a height. How do you pass your bins or something up to be unloaded? The height difference is a problem. Cities are increasingly going towards compactors for 2 reasons. One is that they're the costliest form of transport, and so the kickbacks are the largest, which attracts cities to opt for these. The second thing is that the compactors can be put their mouth down and be loaded at ground level. But compactors are bad for both wet and dry waste. Excuse me, I didn't put this off. The wet waste gets, the whole idea for composting is that it should be aerobic, air should reach every part of the waste. If you're compacting it into an airless lump, you're starting with making it more difficult than it needs to be. And when you're squeezing all the wet waste, or even mixed waste with wet in it, you're ending up with huge amount of vegetable juice, which is going to be called leachate in a couple of days. And that drips all along the road. The compactors do have a tank where the leachate can be collected, but there is no arrangement at the unloading point for unloading the leachate separately and the contents of the compactor separately. So the leachate ultimately, in spite of being separated out in the vehicle, ends up being dumped in the dump site and waterlogging it and creating a lot of groundwater pollution. So I think this secondary transport really needs a lot of thought. And the only way you can solve this problem is really to get up early in the morning, follow the primary collection vehicles to the secondary transfer point, then follow the secondary vehicles to their unloading point and actually see for yourself what happens. And then you can think of solutions. The dry waste is preferred in the West because they have about 20% wet waste, and 80% is packaging waste. So with that, you can get a volume reduction of 5-to-1 or 6-to-1. And they want that because their choice, mostly in the US, is landfilling, where they want the waste as compact as possible to occupy as little volume as possible so the landfill life can go up. This is not our objective in a country like India, where there is so much benefit to be gained without giving any thanks to the informal sector who does all the sorting and actually removes about 15% of our waste at no cost to the citizens or the city or anybody. When all the dry waste is also compacted in a huge tangled mass, it becomes almost difficult to pull out and sort things from this compacted mass. So compactors are not a good solution in India for dry waste either, even though we may get volume reduction, because that is not our end objective. Next. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, I think it's not very clear. The left side is a tipper truck. It just hydraulically goes up and unloads. And this is a compactor where the mouth will come down to road level for ease of loading, but with all the consequent disadvantages of a compactor. Yeah. Now, behavior change by the citizens. I don't know how many of you are aware that until the 1970s, from Vedic times, there was no need for a disposal site, a processing site, a destination as such for the waste. It all would go straight as animal feed or the stable waste, what was left uneaten by the animals, mixed with stable straw, dung, and so on, would go into a pit, and the same season would go into the fields. So even until the 70s, farmers coming in those days with the bullock carts with their farm produce and 3-4 workers to unload it, would hunt around and actually fight over the cement ring bins on the street corners to empty it. And they would all have a claim, a teka on a particular bin and compete for this waste to take it to the farm for composting. And two things simultaneously killed this practice. One was that the plastic yug began, the plastic era, and suddenly people said, my food waste is unwanted, my extra plastic is unwanted, and nobody in those days, 50 years ago, thought of the ill consequences of chucking plastic along with food waste. So when the farmers started taking this as usual, the plastic wouldn't degrade, it would blanket the fields and blow about. The rain couldn't go in, the seeds couldn't sprout out, the fields became infertile, and the farmers stopped emptying the dustbins. So the cities were suddenly left with a problem which they had never been planned for or designed to cope with. And the second thing which hurt it badly was the Green Revolution and massive urea subsidy. That was at a time where nitrogen was the limiting nutrient. Lack of nitrogen is what kept yields down. So when urea was given, leaves turned dark green, jumped out of the ground, and farmers thought that's the miracle answer to everything. They did not realize that millennia of carbon which had been stored in our soil has today become the limiting nutrient. There's not enough carbon. That's why it's important for our city waste as compost to go back to the land. There are experiments where you tell a listening farmer, just reduce your chemical fertilizer by half, whatever money you save, buy as much city compost with that money as you can. So at no extra expense, you get half the chemical fertilizer and about half to 1 ton of city compost per acre. And the yields are the same, slightly more, but the main thing is that the crop is totally drought-proofed. If there's a long gap between rains, the crop does not wilt. You don't need a second sowing or sometimes a third sowing if you have used city compost in your soils. So that is the benefit of keeping our wet waste unmixed. Hopefully we can go back to that pre-70s stage where the cycle was closed and the food waste coming to the cities, the waste went back with all the nutrients to the land. Now we talk about keeping wet and dry. I think all of you need to address the problem of how to change this citizen behavior change. They want to line their dustbins with plastic and then knot it and tie it and chuck it out. This is okay in the West where it's all going to be compacted for landfilling anyway, and nobody cares about burying the nutrients. But here that's not what we want. So I remember my mother starting and others, you take a quarter of a newspaper, fold it in a cone, put it at the bottom of the bin. The paper is recyclable, you can empty the whole thing like that. Other people say if you can wash out your pressure cooker or your cooking vessels, why not your dustbin also? The thing is, we must have a clean, attractive, easily washable dustbin and not an old paint can or broken basket or some, kachra thing in which you put your kachra. So, I think keeping dry waste for weekly collection is something that citizens are prepared for. If the cities are geared for being regular, punctual, and dependable with their doorstep collection all through the week, not just for the wet, but also regular, punctual, and dependable for the dry waste. I think we need behavior studies for shift workers like IT people and paying guests and others. What makes people want to chuck their waste from a motorbike as they're passing by onto the nearest black spot, which is an unauthorized dump, usually below a transformer or someplace like that, which the municipality considers is not its area to clean. The other problem is what to do with disposable hygiene products, sanitary napkins, and even worse is now baby diapers and even senior citizen disposable diapers, which are coming more and more. And that's a real problem to handle. The rules for want of thinking what to do with it say keep it with your dry waste, but that's pretty disastrous. So what is working in Bangalore, for example, that the doorstep waste collectors have a separate yellow bag in which they collect the sani waste, and then they drop it in a yellow drum at a dry waste collection center for pickup by the biomedical waste collection services. But these biomed companies who are obligated to charge hospitals and clinics and so on for taking their biomedical waste, they have no way of charging the citizens for domestic, what you can call biomedical waste. So we need a solution for this. Either the cities have to be prepared to own it as their waste and pay the things, or as the rule is now that bulk generators manage their own waste. So bulk generators are asking the biomedical companies, we don't want to deliver it to your nearest hospital pickup aggregation point, come to our colony gate and take it. But they are asking for 25 rupees per family per month for that. 25 rupees is the cost of the cheapest pack of sani pads. You're paying as much for disposal as you're paying for the new product. So that is a problem that needs addressing. And the main thing is finding creative solutions for the timing. All the cities from probably British times or whatever are locked into this 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pickup of waste. But in Faridabad, for instance, one commissioner who wanted the colony residents to take ownership for their wet and dry, the ladies said, come and collect the waste at 11 or 11:30. When we have finished our cooking, we can give that, and then we're free to come out onto the road and accompany your waste collectors door to door and explain to all our neighbors how to keep wet and dry unmixed. So if that is the demand from citizens, I think it's worth doing a survey. If you had a choice, what would be your ideal pickup time? And how does one harmonize this across so many different people's requirements? Next. The single biggest thing that we need to emphasize for citizens, and this is not in the rules, it's not top of mind for the municipalities. Nobody has asked the citizens or given them solutions for what to do with broken glass. Now, frankly, this is the most harmful and dangerous thing for the waste collectors as well as the waste pickers who have to put their hand into mixed waste just to feed their families and educate their children with whatever daily pickings they get. And these injuries are a real serious problem for them. And if you look at the amount of broken glass that a family would generate in a year, probably not more than one flower pot full. So if we can have a campaign that you just put your broken glass, either a broken plate or tumbler or CFL bulb or anything like that, tube light, just keep it in a flower pot until it's collected. And if we can devise that, it can be collected annually, or give them an idea that this is a glass hundi for whitewashing your temple or having free feeding once a year or something like that. We need to find an attractive way to capture this glass and aggregate it. And if not, homes with gardens should be encouraged to find one small corner where they can bury this. It's also excellent broken glass if you mix it with concrete to plug rat holes at the base of compound walls and so on, or corrugated roofing gaps. Yeah. So that's glass. And the sharps. I think our country has the highest number of diabetics in the world. And they all must be generating huge amounts of needles every year. We just need to either have a small tin or container into which these needles can go. And even that I've seen in a village clinic where I was involved. takes 3 years to fill up that little container with all the needles that are required. This also will protect the workers from stick injuries. There is another possibility. If we talk of EPR, any chemist selling a syringe to anyone should demand a take back of the old syringe or needle, just have a little drop-off bin, maybe with or without a discount or a coupon or something. The cigarette lighters also should not be chucked in the waste. If we can think of how to aggregate these, because they are the ones that start the dump site fires also when they contain a little bit of leftover flammables. And if you're aggregating your button cells, maybe at a watch repair shop or a mobile place, they need to be stored between layers of dry sand, because 2 batteries touching can short and possibly start fires. You read about cell phone fires and so on, even without them touching each other. Next. I would urge all of you to refer to this website, the 2bin1bag.in. There's about 1 lakh households in Bangalore, that's 5 lakh people, voluntarily with no encouragement or cooperation from the city, who are keeping their waste separate in this way. Whenever you say, I'll give people 2 bins, a wet bin and a dry bin, the maids or some transient person, if there's turnover of staff, 1 bin looks just like the other, so what if it's a different color, and everything gets mixed. But if you have a bin for the wet waste and a bag for the dry waste, no one's going to chuck dal or sambar into a bag. So that automatically keeps it separate. And the red bin is for all the haz waste, sharps, sani waste, and so on. Next. Yeah. Okay. Now, the rules say, and really this is the best way for the country to go, is to have decentralized wet waste management. Because, personally, I had fought a 20-year case for hygienic waste management. One of the early victories was that all the states were forced to give waste processing sites to their cities, all of them. I had asked first for the 300 largest cities, 1 lakh plus. The rules came out, 20,000 population plus. So everyone had to have this. They were given the sites for composting. But instead, the cities who were earlier chucking their waste on the road shoulders along every radial road outside the city, which is what drove me to the court, they just took it off the roads and dumped everything into these waste processing sites, which became point sources of pollution, dreadful pollution, polluting the groundwater up to 2 and 3 kilometers away, black, smelly, and irreversibly damaged. So I think the only way is to go back to taking ownership of our waste nearby. Now, this left side is where leaf litter from parks and road sweepings can be composted. It's just a mesh cylinder. You need to add some nitrogen. So either cow dung water, even dog droppings, whatever, would help. And here on the right you see a very effective lane composter. It's a large bin just in between 2 houses in a normal crowded housing layout. And this can take the wet waste of 45 homes, layered with cocoa peat. This cocoa peat is the most effective thing. It is the powder when you are taking out the coir fiber, a kind of a dust, high moisture retention dust falls down, and mixed with biocultures. It comes ready as cocoa peat, so that a sprinkling of that on your wet waste, covered with leaves, there's absolutely no smell, flies, or nuisance. And every 45 houses, if you have one like this, it's really not a nuisance. This needs to be made more acceptable. There's in HSR in Bangalore, there's a new park with a shed having 20 installations of home composters and another 7 large community composters, 100, 500, 200 kilo capacity. And the one over there has this bin all covered with little green flower pots growing all around it, so it looks very attractive also. Next. Someone tell me how I'm doing on time, because, in Cochin, there was a problem. The high-rise apartments, no one would want this apartment composting bin outside their window, near their car, where they could see it from their window, and so on. The solution was to move them up onto the terrace, which in apartments is often very lightly used. Only the people going to service the water tanks or something like that would go up there. Rarely they would have an apartment party up there. So that first picture is 2 bins. You keep adding and turning from one end to the other for 15 days. Leave it to mature while you use the second bin, adding, turning, and so on. Then you harvest the first bin and continue your cycle. This is that Park Lane composter. And these are others, not very clear with this slide. So next. Now, a very important thing that you must design products for is to make all your sani pads and also disposable diapers fully compostable. This is becoming particularly important because starting with Jayalalitha and so many other states following, as a populist freebie, they distribute sani pads to high school girls without thinking where is the facility in a rural area to manage non-biodegradable plastic waste. Burial would be simple, but you can't bury plastic forever. So we have to have them compostable. It's the bottom blue barrier film that is available in India very readily as a biodegradable film. The problem is the outer top portion, which is presently non-woven polypropylene. You can get compostable, this absorbent non-wovens, which will allow bodily fluids to go through, but it's not made in India, and it's available in China if you order 200 tons at a time or something, and also in Turkey. These are the 2 places I know of. I believe that in Korea, Kimberly Clark had started a line of compostable sani pads, but with the 2008 meltdown, they found that was their least profitable line, so they just closed it down and haven't gone back to it. But the point is the technology exists. We need to push all the sani pad makers, the MNCs, to make them fully compostable, or get rules for it, which I've been struggling for long, not succeeded yet. Yeah. In Bangalore, there are other efforts. Why go for disposables at all? Just use washables or use she cups. I don't know how acceptable this is going to be for teenage virgins, but whatever. So there is a Green the Red website or information center. Yeah. Next. I see that in tomorrow's discussion, you all are going to be discussing what to do about dioxins and furans from incinerators. Now, the only plastics that will give you dioxins and furans are chlorine-containing plastics. The commonest one is PVC. And there is also brominated flame retardants in your circuit boards and so on, and some other footwear and other items. But the worst thing is, this PVC, which is 57% chlorine, is called a poison plastic in the West. It was the earliest plastic polymer to be developed. And even today, large brands are using it for their, water bottle wrappers and so on. There's no earthly reason why PVC should be used for something like that. And the second huge problem is for hoardings, banners, and standees and so on. And this is 80% imported from China. So it's really not going to hurt the Indian economy much if we have a ban on single-use plastic. And this thing on the right, you can see we have a polyethylene alternative. Next. Water weeds, water hyacinth in all our urban and rural water bodies is an orphan waste. We have no rules for it, but all the citizens will say, my lake, look at your Powai lake, inexcusably, choked with water weeds. It's a huge cost to the local bodies to keep pulling this out, and then it's so voluminous, how do you deal with it? If you sprinkle it with fresh cow dung that ruptures the cellulose cells, the volume comes down dramatically. But even then, where do you dump this? Deonar is already overflowing. Do you want to add more, dry water hyacinth to that? So they found in the US and Canada that Lake Erie's eutrophication, excessive water vegetation, was caused by the synthetic detergents which had been developed in the 60s. So do write, I don't know if you're going to circulate this thing, it's really worth reading this historical description of the conflict and how the US and Canada agreed first to bring down the free phosphorus in detergents to 8% and in 73 to 2.2%. The EU followed, and it has really solved the problem because phosphorus is the limiting nutrient for water weeds. But for some reason, 50 years after this is known, India is not going ahead with this. So we definitely need a limit on phosphorus. Next. The phosphorus also causes foams, like these three pictures, sort of unbelievable quantities of foam, because the dead vegetation sinking down in the water, it releases surfactants which promote foams. Here's usual water hyacinth. Next. Yeah. The septic tank sludge is another orphan waste which cities have to manage. And this is something of our own doing, every household, which is using phenyl, Harpic, and these kind of things which are designed for keeping germ-free operating theaters. And the advertisers make monkeys out of us saying, keep your toilet germ-free. And they don't care that all this goes into the septic tank and kills the microbes in there who are our friends, who are supposed to digest all the human waste. So we are willfully doing this, and we need to actively promote and design low germ killing things. A spoonful of liquid soap in a bucket is good enough. Next. Yes. Now, the main reason for non-recyclable dry waste is these sachets, which since the last 15 plus years have been designed with they are 5 layers glued together. The 2 outer and the 2 inner are thermoplastic, which can soften and make granules for injection molding again. But they now have a middle layer of thermoset, like your electric switches and so on, which doesn't soften, it chars on heating. And that char blocks the screens of the cottage industry recyclers. So that is why this has become an unwanted waste, because it's designed for non-recyclability. And this is one of my current battles, trying to demand that there should be fully recyclable, only thermoplastic for up to, say, 1 kilo content. Next. Yeah. I don't know, anyone here has heard of plastic roads? Only the faculty. Okay, good. This is a brilliant innovation where even all those non-recyclable pouches can be shredded finely like broken wheat, as you see on the left. And by hand, it is sprinkled onto stones in a conveyor belt going into a heated cylinder where the stones are heated enough for liquid tar to be added at the far end and coat them. When you sprinkle this plastic onto the stones, it goes into the rotary cylinder, heated cylinder, and it gives it softens and coats all the stones with a baked-on primer coating of polymer, to which when you reach the end and you add the liquid tar, bitumen, asphalt, you get a superb binding, and the roads get no potholes, the edges stay firm, and the road life goes up. They claim at least 2 to 3 times, but I've seen a road 8 years with no effect. Next. Yeah. This is the single biggest problem for which we don't have a solution yet. India's waste has an enormous amount of cloth rags. It is so difficult to do any kind of screening in the compost plants to get the plastic or non-organics out of the composted waste. The cloth chokes all your conveyors, feeders, screens, and everything. It's a real problem, and what we need is some way of pulping, beating, and converting all this cloth into fiber. The cotton rags can make very good, fine quality rag content writing paper, letter paper. But polyester or even rayon, nylon, those kind of fabrics, they cannot make paper. But if we can get them back clean into their fiber state, we can use it for pillow stuffing, rajais, mattresses, anything else. We need a solution for cloth, and I don't have any suggestions for you, so I'm looking for answers. Anything else? Is that the end? Yeah. Okay. I've been busy weighing those sachets and seeing what is the packaging to content weight ratio. It's a work in progress. So, next. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
What I have is, I don't know whether you can answer it, I'm just raising the issue. How do we educate the educated people? With formal degrees. I'll give you an example. E-waste. There are e-waste bins around our campus here. People dump badminton rackets into e-waste bins. I don't know why. What is the solution to this sort of a behavior? How do we make behavioral changes? Sanjay, I'm mentioning our lives.
Again, it comes to administrative and political will from the urban local bodies. They need to stand behind their doorstep waste collectors and say, don't pick up mixed waste. Explain once, sort in front of them saying, see, this shouldn't be in here, this shouldn't be in there. After the third time, fine them or just refuse to pick it up. The problem with refusing to pick it up, it will just go into the nearest vacant site and people won't care. So unless we have good, strict enforcement of what the rules are, we're not going to be able to change it. So many people go to Singapore, they're scared of the fines, they will put their toffee wrappers in their pocket, they'll come to Chennai airport and chuck it out on the ground. So what do? It is just enforcement which works. And on this e-waste thing, maybe one should have smaller holes for the bins so that a badminton racket can't go in. Also, if one has regular, punctual, dependable pickup of bulky waste, and we need to ask the campus, will you hang on to your stuff for a month, for 3 months? Would you like to have a drop-off center if you don't want to hang on to it? Or will you wait? It needs dialogue, I think.
Good morning, ma'am. I really like your talk. I am from HSR layout, so I kind of knew I could relate to what you're talking about. So one thing I wanted to add to what Sir said is, yeah, you're right about the behavioral effects, but it's a lot of apathy which we see in our campus right now. There is so much apathy in terms of it's as simple as putting your wrappers into a bin, but it's still not happening. So the question is a public credit system like it was implemented in China a good way to handle this? There are talks of a public credit system where if you say put badminton rackets in e-waste, you get fined. You get fined on a public credit. Say you get negative 20 points on your public credit. So is that kind of an implementation in, say, a micro area like a campus feasible, and would it actually help in this kind of a situation?
Again, it comes to the political and administrative will of either the local body or the management of this campus. Can we give one bin as the responsibility for one hostel? Can we have a competition among the hostels that the ones that have the least violations or zero violations will get some kind of a reward points, picnic, facilities, whatever that the students desire? One has to devise punishment and reward systems. In Warangal, where in 20 days they were able to transform an 11 or 12 lakh city to fully keeping their waste segregated and keeping it at home till the doorstep collector came. All the houses were given a card with 31 days, Jan, Feb, March, and so on. And the waste collector, if they got well segregated waste, would give a tick mark. And all the cards which were all ticks and no cross for no missed day or mixed waste day, all those correct cards would go into a lottery bin, and there would be a big good reward, a TV, a scooty, something big like that. So it capitalized on people's lottery urges to cooperate. There are many ways that you can devise reward systems and punishment systems. How do you, this is something which design people need to think about. How do you design for behavior change?
Hello.
Yes, good morning, ma'am. I used to work with Procter & Gamble, who makes Pampers, and also Kimberly-Clark on different projects. India has a fifth of the world's children and such a, so quite a large birth rate as well. It seems that if India put its foot down, it would have a very strong lobbying force against these companies. What has been your experience on that? I'm talking about the diaper problem.
The which problem?
Diapers.
I think we need to maybe start school postcard campaigns or something saying we are not going to buy your products unless you make them compostable, something like that. I don't know if anyone out there would listen. They would just look at their monthly sales figures and see whether it really did have any impact or not. But I think unless they hear from the public and it hurts their bottom line. One other thing I'm thinking of is economic instruments. Should one say 28% GST on compostable feminine hygiene products and maybe an incentivized 5% for compostable ones for a 5-year window, something like that. We need some economic instruments, perhaps.
Excuse me. Hi. My question is, hello? Ma'am, here. My question is with respect to the management of the dump sites in the cities. And these dump sites have been a continuous cause of concern with respect to the fires, the conflicts, and all, and continuous experimentation has been happening with respect to governance as well as technology. What has been your experience and about it, and what do you think that why these dump sites have continuously remained a cause of concern for the local bodies and the state?
Well, it all begins with indifference to keeping wastes unmixed. Even if you try to enforce, it'll be difficult to cross 50, 60, maybe 70% compliance. I don't think we will ever see 100% unless we have a police state or something. So the mixed waste keeps going on to these dumps. But there is a solution now which I have been cheerleading. I would urge you, all of you, to go to YouTube, enter Almitra Patel. I have put up short videos on how dump sites are being bioremediated and biomined. Bioremediation is to bring air into this waste which is generating leachate and methane and bring it down to a state like leaves on a forest floor where they are harmless. And biomining is, once you've stabilized everything, screen it and unmix what shouldn't have been mixed in the first place, blow out the plastics for plastic roads, use the mid-fraction for road shoulders or road subgrade, use the finest fraction, which is 50% soil, 50% organics, as bio-earth, good earth, people give it different names, for soil improvement, also for restoring mining overburden and so on. So there are, you, in the website, in the YouTube, you look for Gurugram, Nagpur, Kumbakonam. These are 3 different bioremediation, biomining little video clips which explain how the dump sites can be brought down to ground level and the same site can be reused over and over.
Thank you for a very insightful talk. I had a question regarding, is there any thought being given to how one could do better testing of the wet waste which is made into compost to improve the confidence of those who buy it, right? So because there could be a lot of variation in the kind of compost that is actually being created. So how does one improve, say, the testing of that compost so that those who are buying it could get a sense of the quality of the compost?
The rules specify about 22 different parameters that it needs to be tested for. In my experience, except for lead, which in the earlier days used to come from leaded petrol, exhaust blowing onto roadside leaves, ending up increasing lead in the dump sites, older dump sites, that's not so much a problem now. The mistake that people make is expecting compost to be a replacement for chemical fertilizer nutrients. It's not. Who looks at cow dung, which everyone knows is good for the soil? What the cow dung brings is microbes, which help convert the inert minerals in the soil into organics, which the plants can uptake. And the cow dung and city compost, the biggest advantage besides microbes is humus, which is water holding. It can drought-proof your fields. In Pondicherry area, the villagers would go and actually purchase bullock cart loads of waste from the dump, bring it and layer it with leaves and coconut fiber and so on, and then make layered heaps after it was composted, naturally stabilized. They would use it in the fields, and then they found if you planted groundnut, and even if it didn't rain for 12 days, your seedlings would not wilt. There would be enough soil moisture. So one needs to change the expectation of farmers. It's not a fertilizer. It's a soil improver. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. I've met you before, and my house has been zero waste for 5 years.
Mine has been for 55, but
okay.
that's all right.
Okay, and me and I have a lot of people who I work with, so we don't send any waste out, and the cost of processing is lower than what it takes to transport the waste. Right, so I'm wondering if there's any thought on actually incentivizing such activities going on versus the incentive to just throw and transport waste.
Well,
today.
I see from your great challenges for tomorrow that property tax reduction is, I think, one of the options. A lot of citizens are demanding this. I'm saving you money. I'm saving the city and the taxpayer transportation costs. So give me some reward. And a concession in the property tax is what is proposed. I don't know how effective this will be. Who even knows or remembers here how much is your property tax? When did you last pay it? Will you even notice if there's a reduction in it? I think we need a little more tangible thing. There is a company in Bangalore, an NGO, called Reap Benefit. They've tied up with, say, someone like Cafe Coffee Day. You reduce your energy consumption your electric bills or water bills for 3 months, you do some other good thing, and you'll get a coupon which will get you 2 free coffees, something like that, 2 free books somewhere. These kind of more immediate rewards. Maybe that will work.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for a very insightful talk. My question is regarding the wet waste processing. You talked about microbial induction of wet waste processing. However, there are several companies corporates which are selling these wet waste processing machines, which promise to process the wet waste in a very short period of time. I mean, typically, so my question is very obvious. What is your view and comments on that with respect to processing of wet waste?
This promising 24-hour composting,
Yes.
it's really a brainwash. What it does is it shreds your wet waste input, mixes it with either sawdust or cocoa peat or dry leaves or something, so that it is relatively inoffensive. And then they tell you you mature it for a month. It comes to the same thing. Yeah. You can't eat a beetroot and expect to see it in 5 minutes coming out. So it just doesn't work in 24 hours.
But how about the quality of compost? Does it have an impact on that?
If you mature it for the 30 days and it gets a chance to get air, supposing it is stored in these porous bread crates, that kind of thing, the compost quality could be good.
Could be good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just one last question. I see that gentleman there. One last question.
Hi, thanks. So a number of people that I've talked to have theorized that maybe the reason that there's so much waste on roads is because there's not a complete kind of saturation of the informal sector working on these roads to collect it, because there's a lot of profit to be made in a lot of these materials. So I guess my question is, what is your view on the role of the informal sector, especially as materials become more complex and some become less profitable or more profitable than others?
Well, the latest 2016 rules are quite enlightened about this, and they require recognition and working with the informal sector, giving them tags like this, which mainly saves them from police extortion and harassment, gives a householder some confidence that here is a vetted person entering my door, not a thief, and so on. And we need to encourage the informal sector to go door to door, maybe on the dry waste days, taking clean dry waste from the household directly. This has been working since a long time in Ahmedabad with Seva and other things. So there is definitely a role for the informal sector.
Last, please.
Ma'am,
One last.
we've heard quite a lot about use of plastic in making roads. I've read quite a bit about it, but I don't see a wide usage of that. So is there a technical problem yet to be solved, or is it just a political reason?
The problem is that the multi-layer plastic, all these sachets, they need to be aggregated at someone's cost. Maybe all the waste comes to a dry waste sorting center. They will send out the recyclables onward to a major kabadiwala, a recycler, and so on. The non-recyclables will remain, and unwanteds will remain behind. There has to be municipal ownership. If their rules say, all the waste belongs to me, you can't do this or that with it, well, it's their responsibility then. If they have doorstep collection for houses, they must also have daily doorstep collection for every dry waste sorting center, collect that and aggregate it. There are not many shredder companies. There's only one I know of, Arun Enterprises in Chennai, which is doing a good job of cross-cutting the plastic fine enough for shredding. Most of the shredders are like what that US Embassy in Iran, cutting the things into long ribbons or strips like a paper shredder. So those kind of shredders. So if you, sorry. So we need to develop more shredder capacity. I would like to see a rule where every hot mix plant is required to have a fine shredder. So then with the EPR, the laminate, multi-layer plastic, kurkure, whatever we call it, can go straight as is to the cement plant, get shredded and directly fed onto the stones. So it's a matter of linking the source of generation of this multi-layer plastic with the shredding, with the hot mix plant, with the contractor who gets a contract to use plastic roads. If that's not in the contract, he won't do it unless he's asked to. It helps him because if the road contracts are given for 2-year, 3-year maintenance at the road layer's cost, if he uses, say, 25 rupees a kilo, 25,000 a ton plastic for a kilometer of tar road, single lane. That single lane tar road may cost 30-40 lakhs. What's 25,000 to make it absolutely pothole free and the edges firm and save him so much maintenance over the 2 years? So there's a lot of education required. And then they say, but it's not in my contract. What if I use plastic? Will my contract be passed? And so on. So we needed to start from, again, political and administrative will to want these plastic roads.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are more questions, we'll take them offline. If you could just wait. Professor Marjani will just come and if you can just hand over a token of appreciation. For those of you who want to know more about Ms. Almitra Patel, being a self-taught garbologist, she's since then moved on to filing a countrywide PIL to enforce hygienic waste management and was appointed to a Supreme Court committee for solid waste management that produced a comprehensive blueprint for reform. She's also led the country's first Municipal Waste Management Rules 2000, which require minimizing waste to landfill by recycling dry waste and stabilizing wet waste to enrich India's soils. For this, source separation of dry and wet waste and daily doorstep collection of wet waste has now been made compulsory for all citizens in these rules. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you. We waited a whole year for you. We tried inviting you in last year's symposium, but you were busy, and we're so glad we waited. Thank you. We are now going to take a 10-minute break. Tea, coffee are served just behind this auditorium.